Chip. All right, that's better. So, y'all interested in mushroom cultivation, are you? Adventurous mycologists in the building. All right, well, I am not an expert, but I have grown mushrooms quite a bit, so I know a fair amount about the process, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel like you know a little bit about it too. My name is Gary DeSanti, and as it says, I'm an amateur mycologist. I have looked at spores through a microscope, which is the only requirement. And I am a human connection enthusiast, because I love connecting with all of you beautiful people. All right, so growing mushrooms is scary, right? Everybody's like, oh my goodness, it's so daunting. You have to be so sterile and you know. Yes, this is true, because there are other organisms that will outcompete your mushrooms in your grows if you're not careful. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about, how it works, the whole process. I got some funny slides here. I'm going to tell you origin story. I had a kind of a weird trip to this point. I never liked drugs. I wasn't a big drinker or anything, not even weed. But mushrooms, when I heard about them, they fascinated me, you know, and I'm an arborist by trade, so I work with trees. And about 20 years ago, I learned how the mycorrhizal connection between trees helps them grow and can save your plants when they're dying. So that was a big thing for me and my partner. We sold that big time. We were inoculating the soil with mushroom spores 20 years ago, just because we knew it was good for the trees. So I've always been fascinated by fungi. And then I joined a band that's a Tool tribute band. And if anybody's familiar with Tool's music, it's very psychedelic, right? And Maynard wrote a book about his life, and he talks about psychedelics and how they helped him with his creative process. So when I read that, I was like, I'm kind of intrigued, you know, I want to know more. But I am no like crazy jump in without testing the water first kind of guy. So I read a bunch of books, and I learned how safe mushrooms are, and how all the stuff we've been told was a lie, basically by the mainstream media. They have like the lowest LD50 of just about any drug on the market anywhere, like even aspirin, anything. Mushrooms just can't really kill you. So, there are some that can kill you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about the ones in the woods. Okay, there are some that can kill you, so be careful. But you know, the psychedelic mushrooms, they're not going to kill you. They might drive you nuts, but you know, you got to be careful that way too. So I decided to take them, but where the hell do you get them? You know, there's nowhere. I don't know people. I don't know anybody. I asked a few friends. No, I don't know anybody. You know, and so I guess I got to grow them myself. You know, that's the only way out. And it turned into this long process of learning how to grow them. Let's see if this will work. All right, so I started out as a baby, and then I became that guy over there on stage. My lovely wife here, Sam, she's the one that painted me up. And the hair, that was my hair. It's not there anymore, but I chopped it all off. So here's some first steps and supplies you will need. Okay, looks like a long list, but you probably have a lot of this stuff already. The big thing is a pressure cooker. I mean, you really do need a pressure cooker to do a lot of these things, just because you have to sterilize your grain. Grain can have all kinds of different spores and bacteria and whatnot on it. That, you know, if you're going to eat it, you cook it, it kills it. It's gone, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're going to grow mushrooms, that stuff can't be there, or it will contaminate your grow. So you do have to sterilize, and the best way to do that is with a pressure cooker or an autoclave, but those are tens of thousands of dollars, so don't go that way. Don't go that way. All the rest of this stuff really is stuff you probably have. You probably will have to order mushroom spores. You probably don't have those on hand. But there's tons of places to order mushroom spores from. And they will send them to you in a spore syringe. They will send them to you in swabs. They will send them to you in slants. There's so many ways you can get mushroom spores, and they're perfectly legal. Just don't grow them. Right? All right. Oh, you go ahead. Get your picture. So, my first time, I got really excited and I bought all these mason jars and all this grain, and I was like sterilizing everything, and you have to hydrate your grain before you put it in the jars. So I read one thing about how to hydrate your grain, and I followed it. Well, it didn't work. It gave me grain that was way too wet, okay? And I was excited though because I started to see growth in my jars. Let me get to the part where there's some there. So you see that little white spot there? That's mycelium. Okay, and mycelium is the roots of the mushroom. That's actually the whole plant is the mycelium. The mushrooms you see coming out of the ground, that's just the fruiting body. So it's like an apple on an apple tree, right? It's just the fruit. That's just for reproduction. That's what produces the spores and keeps them going. The mycelium is everywhere. All through the soil, everywhere there's mycelium, and it connects all the plants on earth and makes them grow. It helps them grow. It feeds them nutrients. They are a symbiotic relationship there. Okay. Let me go back a couple slides here. So these are the grain jars, and those are the lids. And I think, did you bring any lids, Julie?
Only for liquid cultures.
Okay. All right. So these lids, the way these were made is I just punched a couple holes in them. I actually drilled holes in these ones, and then you put RTV silicone. It's like for gasket sealers and stuff like that. You put that on the top and bottom, and that's going to give you a injection port that will self-heal. So you can just stick your syringe right through it, pull it out, and it closes back up. And then I have another hole with cotton in it that will give it a little bit of air exchange, because you need a little bit of air exchange in there too. When you pressure cook these things, if you don't have an air exchange, you got to leave the lids loose and turn the top part upside down so the seal's not made. Otherwise, your jars will explode. You don't want that. So you just load them up in a pressure cooker, cook them at 15 psi for about 30-45 minutes.
2 hours.
Do you do 2 hours? I've never done 2 hours. Okay, 2 hours. She says 2 hours. This is my friend Julie Trotta. She's from Tucson. She grows mushrooms commercially, and we kind of came up at the same time growing. And she decided to take it into a business land and sells to restaurants and farmers markets and all that. She grows all the cool shit. Grows the lion's mane and I can't even tell you all the mushrooms she grows. It's insane. But she's going to help me out with this because she's had a lot more experience than I have now. So here's her jars. And that's when we started to see growth. I was like, a schoolgirl all happy. I was like, yes, look at all that mycelium. This is going so well. And then, no success. Everything contaminated. All the jars were bad.
That's because you only cooked them for 30 minutes.
Don't make points. All right, start over. All right, so preparing your grain for inoculation. So you rinse it, you hydrate it, which means you soak it, simmer it, you strain it out, dry it out. You don't want it to be wet on the surface. You want the surface of the grain to be pretty dry. And then you load it in the jars. Now, I did not. Go ahead. The inside of the grain will have water content. And that's what you want. You don't want it to be on the outside of the grain. So you can just pat it with like a paper towel and see if there's any moisture on there. And if there's too much moisture on there, don't put them in the jars yet. Let them dry a little more. So how long, Julie? How long do we pressure cook these things?
2 hours.
All right. Let's see. Rinsing. Oh, we need to wash that.
When you say grain,
Yes.
what do you mean by grain?
There's a lot of different kinds of grain you can use. You can use brown rice. You can use rye berries. You can use millet. You can use popcorn. What's your favorite? I like whole oats now, but
Oats and Milo.
whole oats and Milo. There's so many you can use. It's just nutrition, right? That's what the mycelium's eating. So it has to have some form of nutrition. It's good to have small grains because it's more inoculation points. So if there's mycelium on the grain, you spread it through your substrate. It gives you more inoculation points to grow more mycelium from.
Sorry, this last question.
No, you
Does it
keep
matter
going.
for like the species of mushrooms on substrate you use?
Yes. So there's certain mushrooms that are wood-loving mushrooms. I don't really grow too many of those. She does a lot of those.
For these purposes.
For these purposes, for cubes, you're gonna want just basic cocoa coir and vermiculite substrate. They like manure, but I found it very difficult to work with, so I don't usually do it.
Just a real quick question. When you said that it all went bad, how would you know that it went bad?
So if anything starts to turn different colors besides white,
Okay.
it's not good.
Okay.
And you'll see yellows and greens and all different kinds of colors, blacks, and you'll know right away. And it'll smell terrible too. So that's the other thing. If there's a sweet smell, if there's a sour smell, anything but fresh mushroom smell coming from that jar, throw it out. It's not worth keeping around. All right, so here we go. I've got this little guy, and as you can see, large grain bags. 120 minutes. She was right. I was doing small jars, 90 minutes. I was still wrong. All right. Liquid agar, and we're going to talk about agar. I haven't spoken about it yet, but agar is wonderful because it will show you if there's contamination. All right, and it helps you in the process so that you can grow without having to worry so much. But some of this stuff takes a lot of time, and when you put a lot of time in, you don't want to have just a bunch of green shit in your tub at the end, because that's no fun. So, everybody get pictures of that needs it? So my first success, I used BRF cakes, which is brown rice flour, okay? It's so simple. You take brown rice flour, you mix it with vermiculite, and then you inoculate the jar with spores. When the mycelium takes over the jar, you birth the cakes out of the jar, soak them, and then you stick them in a shotgun fruiting chamber, and you have mushrooms like this.
Roll them in vermiculite.
Yes, I'll get there.
Those steps a little more.
Yes, I was trying to get to the slide so you can get a picture of it if you need. So here's the recipe. Very simple, like I said. There's only 2 main ingredients here, besides the mycelium. You can see a little pin inside that jar there. That's a little mushroom trying to grow in the jar before I even burned it. So they want to grow. They just need a place to do it, okay? I found this so fun. Like growing this way with the cakes was so much fun because they just look cool. I mean, and they come out fast and you're like, oh, look at this. The next day there's so many mushrooms coming out of the thing and you're just going, how does it happen so fast? You know, other plants take forever to grow and these things grow overnight.
Once it's fully like inoculated in the mycelium, if you just let it get contaminated, it's still grow.
No, no.
It has to be in sterile environments.
Well, okay, once you take it out of the jar, you're no longer sterile, right? They will contaminate eventually. I mean, almost every grow is going to eventually contaminate because there's spores in the air all the time. So all it takes is one to get in there and, you know.
Do you keep them in the dark?
No, you don't have to keep them in the dark. I usually keep mine just 12 light, 12 dark, just like regular day schedule. Mushrooms don't care about sunlight so much, right? You don't want them in direct sunlight because that's not going to help them, but it might hurt them if you dry it out. But mushrooms don't really care about light. You look like you're looking at me with something.
It affects the color.
It does affect the color, yeah. But otherwise,
They still grow.
they still grow. So here's some jars that are nice and clean, nice white mycelium. And now if you look at the lids, the way I do these is I'll put 4 holes on each corner of the lids and then 1 in the center. And I'll inoculate each one of those points. Just makes the jar colonize faster. And then after I inoculate them, I cover those holes with micropore tape so that nothing can get in there and contaminate my grow. And you can leave them, they can go for a long time. You can leave those jars for months and they'll still be good, even after they're fully colonized. I mean, I don't recommend it, you should not do that, but you can do it. You can stick them in the fridge and they'll last longer because it grows slower that way. Look at that funness. Look at, on the right, there's hold on. You can see this. That's just beautiful. I love that. I love it. All right, so after you take them out of the jars, they smell lovely, and put them in water, in a big pot of water. Cover it. I usually put a plate on top and then something heavy just to hold them underwater. Keep them in there for like 12 hours to hydrate. You want to rehydrate these jars, these cakes, after you take them out of the jar. Get them a nice water content before you put them in your shotgun fruiting chamber and fruit them out. And this is what that looks like. So a shotgun fruiting chamber is just a tub. You drill holes all around it, on top, bottom, everywhere. And then you put perlite in there, and you hydrate the perlite, get it real wet, put it in there, and then you cut those little circles of aluminum foil to the size of your cakes. You don't want them bigger than the cakes, you want them exactly the size of your cakes, and you put the cakes on top of it. And that's gonna allow those mushrooms to grow all the way around. Now with this method, after you soak them overnight is what I usually do. Then you roll the whole cake in vermiculite again. So there's a casing layer around the entire cake. And what that does is create a microclimate and allow those mushrooms to come through. And you'll see them start bursting through the surface of that vermiculite. Also with this method, it's a little bit more labor intensive because you have to fan and mist these things a few times a day. So you're gonna get like a little Flairosol bottle that sprays a real fine mist of water, spray them down, and then fan them for like a minute, and then put your lid back on and leave it. A few hours later, do it again. So do that like 3 times a day, and you will get lots of good mushrooms coming out of that. You can read this and have fun with that.
So you missed the actual cake?
Yes. Yeah, I missed the whole tub inside, the whole thing.
What's the aluminum?
Not like you don't want dripping water or anything. You just want a real light mist. What the water does, as the water evaporates, that's what actually spurs on the mushrooms to grow. So you want that evaporative process going on. That's what happens in nature. Like in the morning, the dew will start to evaporate, and the mushrooms come up with it. So
What's the aluminum foil for?
I think it's just to keep it off the perlite, to keep it, from getting any contamination from the perlite, because that's not sterile. It's not a sterile surface.
Stops the pinning.
Oh, underpinning too? Yeah, you don't want any pins coming out the bottom.
What's that shiny gold stuff?
Aluminum foil.
Well, that's aluminum?
Are you talking about on the bottom?
I've seen, I guess.
Are you talking about the picture on the left?
No.
Oh, what are we talking about
I've
here?
seen like that gold color right
Oh,
there.
the stuff on top? That's
Yeah.
that's vermiculite. Vermiculite's just a.
Why is it so, that's crazy gold, it's crazier gold than silver.
I don't know. It does shine. Some of it's shiny. Some of it's a little shiny.
What
Yeah.
is that? And what is
I
vermiculite?
don't know what vermiculite's even made of, but what it does is hold some space and water content. It helps keep things moist and makes space for the roots to grow, for trees and stuff like that. Same with the mycelium. It's room for them to grow.
Is there a certain level of humidity you want to keep it?
High, which is very hard here. That's part of the problem with growing in Arizona is we have such dry air that makes it very difficult. And so when I started growing, I was growing in a monotub, and she was too, and we realized like it was almost impossible to maintain the amount of humidity we wanted. So we got all these humidifiers going, and we've got a Martha grow tent, a big grow tent with all our stuff in there. It's just cumbersome, and she switched, and I've switched now to just doing unmodified tubs, which means we don't put any holes in the tubs, we don't do anything but just put the lid on, and it works. So, that's what I'm going to recommend people do. But as you can see,
Is there a certain temperature?
yeah. So, the warmer you get, the more likely you are to get contamination, because a lot of the contamination can grow faster in warmer temperatures. So if you can keep it between 70 and 80, you're pretty good. You can go up to 85, you know what I mean? But I've found when I go warmer like that, it tends to contaminate more often. And I don't know I don't know if I did something different in my sterilization process, but that's what I've found. You've seen the same thing?
Yeah, it's a race.
Yeah, because you're racing for, like I said, there's a lot of things out there, trichoderma, different bacteria that will outcompete your mushrooms. So in nature, the mushrooms don't have to worry about it. They'll just move away. They'll just grow away from the contamination stuff. When you're in a box, they can't know where to go. So the thing's going to beat them. So trichoderma is the worst because it just turns everything green or yellow, and it's horrible. And you just got to throw out everything because it'll contaminate your whole house. But it's not dangerous, but because it's everywhere. It's everywhere in the soil out here. But you kill it off when you sterilize things. You kill it off when you pasteurize things, and then when it gets back in, it'll beat your mushrooms. So, but isn't that fun? Look at those. As you can see, I went a little crazy taking pictures of these things because they were my babies. Now, after you harvest them, harvesting them is very easy. You can either just grab the bottom and twist and pull, take them right off, or you can just snip them with scissors or a knife right at the base. And you can continue to get flushes of mushrooms after you harvest. So what you want to do is harvest them ideally right before the veil breaks the bottom of the mushroom. Let's see if I can find a picture. So this guy, you can see that little deal right there at the bottom. That's the veil. It has already broken on this mushroom. When they haven't, it looks like this. Okay, that has not broken yet. So if you can get them right between that stage and that stage, you're golden. Well, you don't want the spores to come out, because once they open, the spores start falling, and it'll turn everything black. I've got some pictures, I'm sure, of some that the spores have fallen on. And it's not like that big of a deal, but it does lead to a higher likelihood of contamination faster. So you want to try to avoid it if you can. This picture here. So those ones, you see the kind of darkness right there? That's spores that have come off another mushroom. Because I waited too long to harvest them. I mean, like I said, it's nothing like horrible, but you want to try to avoid it if you can. And there is a nice jar of BRF that is fully colonized. That's when it's ready to birth out of the jar. So now, what I did was, I did the same brown rice flour jars, but then I spawned it to bulk substrate. And what that means is you take this mix right here, and you mix in your mycelium grains into this mix in a tub, and you can do any kind of container pretty much will work. Like, I've kind of gone to smaller tubs, like 6 to 12 quart tubs, just so that I can kind of micromanage each one, and if there is contamination over here, I might not have it in the rest. So I can toss that one out, and I still have all these other ones to work with. When I started, I was doing like a 64, quart tub, like a big mono tub, or you can even, she's done like 105, was it 105 quart tub? I mean, you can do big tubs, but once you get contamination, you're out of luck. Everything's gone, So I've gone to using smaller tubs, just not even cutting holes in them or anything.
Do you make your own mix and stuff?
Yeah, right here. This is it. You just buy your cocoa coir. You can get it at pet stores, feed stores, Walmart, any place. Like the reptile section usually in the pet stores has them. They're just bricks, and they're solid. And so when you put water in them, they hydrate and they fluff out. And so this recipe right here is for one standard brick of cocoa coir, and you use vermiculite, a little gypsum. Gypsum's optional, but it's supposed to help the mushrooms grow, and I think it gives them calcium. Is it calcium? Gypsum? Yeah. It just helps with the calcium content in your substrate. And you can just do coir alone, and they'll grow. From what I've heard, I've never done it, but that's what I've heard. You can just use coir and it'll grow fine.
So you make that bulk, and then you put part of that bulk in your smaller tubs as your substrate?
Yes. So you mix in like in a 6 quart tub. I'll use 2 of those little jars, and the rest substrate 1-to-1 ratio with the substrate in the jars.
The spawn.
Yes, the spawn. Sorry, you keep on doing that. All right. So an important thing about your bulk substrate though is you have to pasteurize it. You don't want to sterilize it. It's different. You sterilize things in a pressure cooker. With the pasteurization process, it's a lower temperature. You want to come up? Come on. This girl has built this giant pasteurization machine, and you just tell me.
So differences between sterilization and pasteurization is big. I don't like talking on stage, sorry. I was duped into this. So basically when you want to work in an open air, you want to pasteurize. The reason being is because pasteurization leaves good bacteria. So good bacteria helps fight off those contaminants that you can get. When you sterilize, and I have a 55-gallon sterilizer that it super pasteurizes, which means it kills all that bacteria. So when it comes to open air inoculation, you want to simply pasteurize because it lowers the chances of contamination. Yeah, back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Julie. I hope I get applause someday. No, but yeah. So this is just like Wikipedia nonsense, but basically, everybody knows milk's pasteurized, right? I mean, it just kills some of the bad, harmful bacteria and then leaves the good stuff behind so we can benefit from it. There's also a way to pasteurize with the bucket, and I've used it, she's used it, it works. Basically, you just get one of those buckets from Lowe's or Home Depot with a lid, and you put your brick in there, you put your vermiculite in there, whatever you're going to use for your substrate, and then you just pour boiling water in and cover it as fast as you can, wrap it with some blankets or something to keep it insulated, and then let it sit overnight until it cools off, and then it's ready to go. You're good to go.
Does one substrate grow every kind?
No, well, every kind of work, yes. For these purposes, yes. But if you're gonna go into like lion's mane or oysters or something like that, the gourmet varieties of mushrooms, then you might need to get some wood pellets and stuff like that to use as your substrate, because they're wood-loving mushrooms, and they'll only eat certain types of trees. So you'll need to get like elm. What kind do you use? Like oak wood, or there's different kinds they sell for mushroom
How do you
cultivation.
prevent your substrate from being recontaminated once you take it out of there?
You don't.
Don't.
Yeah, once you go to substrate, you're no longer sterile. There's no way to keep it sterile at that point, unless you're working in a clean lab. But nobody has that at their house, so it's not going to happen. But if you do everything right up to that point, you're going to have pretty good success. I mean, and usually you're not going to get contamination for 2 to 3 flushes of mushrooms, so you'll be in good shape. So here's how I did it. One time, you just take your jar out, you hydrate it, and then you use a cheese grater and grate it into your substrate. It's simple. And you can see this. I was using a monotub at this point.
Nice.
The hole that's drilled in the side there. There's 6 holes in it, so there's 2 on each long side and 1 on each short side. And during the colonization period, right after you put this spawn into the bulk, you got to leave it for a little while to colonize the substrate more. Now, some people say you don't have to do that. You can just go straight to fruiting conditions, which I've never tried that, but I've heard people have success with it. I always leave mine for a couple weeks, let it colonize more, and then put it into fruiting conditions. And fruiting conditions is simple. You just take the tape off of those holes and stiff it with polyfill, which is like bedding, the stuff inside your pillows and your bed, your blankets and stuff. You stuff it with that so that air exchange can happen, but not very many contaminants can get in. Pretty simple.
Have you tried any filtration on your hair? Other than
You can use like micropore tape on the sides too, and that'll give you a good, air exchange, but you don't have to. It's just more work.
I just have access to 5 to 10 micron filters.
Huh? Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if the more sterile you can stay, the better. Obviously, So whatever you want to do to up your chances, I say go for it.
You sterilize your hands and everything?
Oh, yeah.
Before touching it?
Yeah. I use hand sanitizer or 70% isopropyl alcohol, and one or the other, every time before I touch anything.
Do you find a clear box is better than a darker non?
Yeah, I like clear boxes because you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
You don't have to like that you saw back there with the tub. Let me go back here. So that black bag that I put in there is just a trash bag, right?
Yeah.
It's just the trash bag material. I lined the bottom of the tub with that just to keep side pins from happening, but that can be a clear plastic bag. That does not have to be black. I've seen people paint the bottom of their tub, which is absolutely ridiculous. That doesn't do anything. The reason the bag works is because as your mushrooms grow, they suck up the moisture content from your bottom layer, right? And that makes your cake shrink. So the whole bottom of the tub becomes a cake, and as they grow, the cake shrinks. And if the bag's in there, the bag will shrink with it. So it eliminates that microclimate on the side and stops side pinning from happening. So all your mushrooms will come out the top, and that's what you really want, because they're a pain in the ass to harvest when they're side pins all over the place. So, let's see where we're at here. So there's another thing in the monotub there, and you see I just covered it up with duct tape that's fancy like outer space, because I like that stuff. But yeah, that's just for colonization. You just want to keep it nice and closed. And like I said, we've switched to just keeping our tubs unmodified, so we don't even put holes in the tubs at all. I have not tried that with a large tub, but I'm sure it would work. I just followed the things I read. You know what I mean? You just and you learn as you go. But yeah, look at all the spores on this sucker here. I find it strange that often the taller mushrooms have a lot of spores on them, even when they're like above the other mushrooms, and I don't know how that happens, but I know that's spores. 100% I know that's spores. Super fun. Super fun. Okay, so once you have mushrooms, right, you are in business forever because these things produce so many spores that you will never run out of material to grow with once you have one grow. Okay? So what you can do is make spore prints, okay, from these mushroom caps. You just cut the cap off. I have a picture here. Now the ones on the right, those are the spore prints. On the left, those are the mushroom caps sitting on top of tinfoil, and I just put a little jar over the top of them with a little piece of, I think I just used like paper towel or something, just so there's a little gap to let some air through. Because if you put the jar over there solid, it gets too much moisture and it gets all wet in there and gross, and so you don't want to do it. You want to leave a little gap at the bottom. But those spore prints are beautiful, and you can use those for a long, long time. There's billions of spores there. And then you dry them. Now, when you got big mushrooms, you got to cut the caps off anyways because they won't fit in most dehydrators that way. But you lay them flat, dry them out, get them real cracker dry so they're just like, you know, and then you're good. Put them in a bag, put them in a jar. You can store them in mason jars. Buy the desiccant packs online. You can get them on Amazon, tons of them. Just throw one in there. They'll be good for a long, long time. So, agar.
In how many days do you get your full-grown mushrooms?
Months, not days. Yeah, it takes a long time. So, initial inoculation to colonizing a jar can be 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes even longer though, depending on the strain. Certain mushroom strains grow much slower. So if you're doing something like albino penis envy, those grow super slow. It might take you 2 months to get a fully colonized jar. I like to use smaller jars just so that it doesn't take as long, and you can go grain to grain to make it grow faster.
Can you shake it up to make it grow faster?
Yes, you don't want to shake them until they're about 30% colonized though. You want to get enough mycelium in there so that when you shake it, it's going to be worthwhile. And then once you shake it, it goes pretty fast after that. But it can take a while. What's your experience with that?
I agree.
Yeah, it can take a while. And then once you spawn the bulk, like I said, I usually leave them for about 2 weeks to colonize that bulk substrate more. And then I put it in fruiting conditions, and then it can take another 2 weeks sometimes to see mushrooms start coming up. So.
You don't really worry about the contaminants of the air, like whatever happens, it is what it is.
I try to stay as clean as possible the whole way through, but once you go to bulk, you're going to be limited on how much you can control. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be open air involved. So just try to keep it in a still room. Turn your AC off. Don't have any airflow. Don't have fans blowing or anything. And work quickly. Keep the stuff closed as often as you can. You know. All right. So agar, yay. So the benefits of agar, obviously, is I told you before, is finding contamination. So contamination will look all kinds of different colors. I've seen reds, blues, blacks, greens, purples. I've seen all kinds of different colors of contamination. And when you inoculate agar, all you see is the mycelium grow on the top, unless there's contamination there.
Do you want to pass it around?
Sure. So my friend here has brought some lovely, what is it?
That's elm oyster.
Elm oyster mushrooms, and this is a agar plate with the beautiful white mycelium in there. And what it allows you to do is, like I said, you can screen for contamination before you ever go to your bulk substrate, before you ever go to even grain. And you know you're putting just clean mycelium in that grain, and you don't have any worries about contamination at that point. Now, obviously, the hard part is staying sterile through the process of that. So there's different ways to do that. You can use a still air box. That is probably the easiest and cheapest way. All you need is a big Sterilite tub. You cut some holes in it that you can stick your arms in, and then you work inside that tub with everything you do. Anytime anything's open, you work with your hands inside that tub. You don't want the kind that has the gloves already built into the thing, because you can't clean those well enough, and it's not beneficial. It actually leads to more contamination. You just want holes that you can put your arms in, sand them down so you don't cut your arms like I did. But I hated working in a still air box because it just wasn't comfortable, and it was hard to see stuff. I couldn't take pictures of stuff. It was just driving me nuts. So I ended up breaking down and buying myself a flow hood because I just had to have one. And it was too expensive, but it was worth it because I love working in that thing. Now the other thing you can do with agar is you can isolate genetics from your mushrooms. So basically, let me give you a recipe for agar first. Let me do that. And agar is the same kind of process. Once you make it, it's like gelatin, right? You can't use gelatin because mycelium can eat gelatin. It'll just break it down. It'll be a liquid again if you do it in that. So you have to use the agar. You can buy that telephone brand agar at like most of the Asian markets. That's where I've had the best luck finding it. And if you can navigate their aisles, there's not much in English.
Amazon has it.
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon too, but I remember asking people in the store and they looked at me like I was a crazy white person. I felt like a crazy white person. But you have to pressure cook your agar to make sure there's no contaminants in there. So, let's see. Yeah. So right here, the important thing is to let it cool before you pour, but don't let it cool too much. Because if you let it cool too much, it solidifies in your jar that you sterilized it in, and you can't pour it anymore. So it's a balancing act when it comes to pouring agar. You can buy pre-poured plates, so you don't have to do any of that. They'll come in a package, and you can just, there's all kinds of sites on Amazon you can buy them on, but it's more expensive. I like doing it myself. I feel like a scientist. I'm a tree guy, but I like to feel like a scientist. So here's some plates. As you can see, I sectioned off some of those to put different samples from mushrooms, and I actually took stipe samples from the center. What do you call that? Just a
Tissue?
yeah, like tissue sample from the center. So you cut your mushroom long ways down the center, and then right from the center of that stalk, which is called the stipe, you pull a little piece of material and put it on the agar, and that's how you get the clean material from the mushroom. Because if you take something from the outside, you're likely to have some contamination there.
Cut the top and rip it.
Cut the top and rip it.
Yeah, because if you're cutting all the way down, it's
True.
just better to.
Yeah. So cut the top, then just rip the whole thing in half, and then pull your sample from the center. So there's isolating genetics. So
A fresh mushroom?
yes,
Not
yeah,
dry.
not dry. Yeah, fresh mushroom. So here you can see how you isolate genetics. So you can make out on the left. You can kind of see how those sections are. You can see like the separation between, and each one of those will be a different genetic for that mushroom, right? And so if you can cut off just a piece of each of those and put it on a separate agar plate, you'll just have that one type of genetic on the plate. And the more clean you can get your plates, I mean, I've seen some really pretty plates with mycelium, with the good mycorrhizal, the big stalk kind of root looking ones. Those are just beautiful to me. I would make a necklace out of that if I could. Yeah, and you can use different colors of agar. I don't like to, but a lot of people like different colors. The charcoal activated kind is the black one. That one I might try because it kind of does look cool with the white mycelium over the black agar. This one, I love that. Beautiful. Yeah, this is the mycelium on the agar. And said, go ahead. What's that?
Is there any argument to growing a closed cap or a open cap? Like, or eating a closed cap or a open cap?
No.
No?
No, they're the
Doesn't
same.
matter?
Yeah, they're the
That's
same.
magic myth?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, there's differences in potency throughout the mushroom, from the stem all the way on the cap. In different parts of the same cap, there'll be different potencies. It's nature, man. You just got.
Alright. No, I never do.
Wait, what was the thing where there were multiple ones and then you said you isolated it? Was that from different mushrooms or?
Okay, so this agar plate is probably from either a sample from a mushroom or from a spore syringe, right? So when they start growing out, you can have multiple types of genetics in that mix.
Because they're
right?
like recombining themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if you want to really get it down to just this specific grove of mushrooms that you have, like this one specimen, you have to do this. And sometimes it could take you 7-8 transfers before you have it really isolated, but it's worth it in the end because you have something nice.
So you were saying you split the stem, you take a piece of the inner stem and you put it in the agar, and that grows mycelium?
Yes, sir. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. It's as I said. Once you grow, you'll have material to keep going forever. If you know.
The spores will last a long time.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. True. So yeah. Did you understand that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you're gonna get to this or not, but I just want to get some clarity about agar, what it is. So you make this substance and you put some of the spores into it. Now, are you growing the mycelium just to see if that batch or that section is contaminated, or are you able to actually use that mycelium that's in the agar?
Oh yeah, we're gonna use that mycelium.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But you, like I said, you can see if there's contaminants in it, which is it's a bonus. You know what I mean? But once you grow out a plate, like that plate, for instance, you could take that plate now, and what I've done is I just slice it up in a grid pattern, and then I just dump it in a jar, in a grain jar, and that will inoculate that whole jar.
So you're not actually, you don't need a syringe or anything like that. You just take the mycelium from the agar and it goes right into the grain.
Yep.
You're throwing all the agar in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay.
Now, using the other method, when you had it on the, I think, on aluminum foil and then.
The cakes, right, right.
So if I wanted to put that in a solution to inject later, what solution do you put? Is that just, because when you buy
Liquid
spores,
culture.
it comes in a solution.
Right.
What is that solution?
Oh, you're talking about the spores?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
it's just distilled water. It's just in distilled water.
Just water.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm gonna get to, you can also make liquid culture, which I'm gonna get to too, and I'm gonna have Julie help me with that part. Because liquid culture is really the way to go if you're serious about this stuff, and it's so easy. Yeah, but I mean, I still am a big fan of agar. There's different types of agar you can buy that will actually screen out different contaminations, so they use it in the medical field a lot. You can find, staph infection, that kind of stuff from a certain type of agar. So depending on what you're trying to screen for, you can check your liquid culture too with agar. Even when you're doing liquid culture, you can put a little bit of that on agar and make sure there's no contamination in it as you go, so you're not going to run into more risks moving forward. So there's some contamination. So you can clearly see that's not mycelium. That's nasty. Yes, sir.
Have you ever bought contaminated spore syringes or contaminated looking for?
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The problem is that, like I said, once you're growing in a bulk situation, you're no longer sterile. So spores can't really be sterile. There's no way to ensure that they're sterile. But if you go to agar first, it saves you from spending money on grain and not being able to use it.
When you talk about growing it on agar, is there a certain temperature and then how many days or?
So it doesn't take very long. You'll usually start to see growth within a few days. You don't want to let the mycelium grow all the way to the edge of the plate. You want to try to stop it before that and use it before it gets all the way to the edge of the plate. Although I've had success even when it got to the edge of the plate. It's just try not to, because you're more likely to have contamination in that case too. I don't know why, but you just
Just
are.
like room temperature.
Room temperature, yeah, I've never had well, it's really hot here, so getting warm enough isn't usually a problem in Arizona. Being too hot in the summer is a problem, so, I mean, I keep my house at 72, and that's where I grow everything at, so I've never had an issue, 72. So here's liquid culture. Julie, I'm gonna bring your ass back up here. Come on, come on. I know.
Tell them what you use.
I use malt and dextrose. It's a 50-50 combination. And I actually use what's called peptone, which is a type of bacteria that actually helps mycelium grow. So it's kind of fun. Stinks, smells like death. It's really bad. I have to I put on a full respirator just to work with it because it stinks terribly. Filters. Okay, so this is a liquid culture jar, which is basically just 500 milliliters of water, filtered water, the 20 grams of liquid culture premix that I made, and then the peptone. So this has been cooked for approximately 45 minutes. It's uninoculated, so in the light it's kind of got a little bit of a cloud to it, but it's empty. In the bottom I have a stirrer, which is just a little magnetic stirrer that I use to stir it on the daily. This lid here is made by a friend of mine that he sells like supplies, and it's got like a filter and an injection port, and then this here you attach to your syringe so you can pull it out when you're ready to use it. So there's that one. You can go easier and make your own. Let's see, I thought I did a simpler one. Okay, I got a couple of different ones. So one of them I've just put in a, it's got a little, we can pass them around, I guess. Self-sealing, like, what is that? Like a, what is this called? Injection port, thank you. And then I've sealed it with a micropore tape. So I used a hole punch to make the holes, which is a lot easier than trying to use a nail or trying to drill through it, but hole punch just goes right through it, makes you a nice clean circle. And once they've been sterilized, you can use that agar dish to take a small chunk of mycelium from there and inject it into your liquid cultures.
So what do your stir plates cost?
Stir plates? Did you ask what do they cost?
I work with water a lot, and we had some that were pretty expensive, but.
These guys?
They're like
Yeah, your
$100.
stir plates, so look, you're gonna have your magnetic.
I get mine on Amazon for like $25.
You
They're
don't
they're not
necessarily
expensive, yeah.
have to do that. Some people will put a marble. You can put a marble and just
Yeah, just
swirl it.
swirl it
That's
around.
all. I mean, you can make things as difficult or as simple as you want with mushrooms. So,
It's
um,
25 bucks is not much.
yeah. I mean, they're fairly cheap. What does come costly is little magnets. If you lose them, they're like, oh, man. But basically, when you're at this point, it just takes like a very small amount. And what I do is I use one of the. We have syringes here.
This stuff here is, you put spores in there? I missed something.
Yeah, you put mycelium in.
You
In there.
can
You
do
can put
with
spores.
spores or mycelium.
So
if
you
you're going
put
to
it
do
on the
it,
agar first and then you put it in this one?
correct. So you can go from a spore and just inject 1 cc into the liquid culture jar. From there, it'll start growing out mycelium. It's a lot better to go from agar because you know it's clean.
You're running risk
So-
of contamination with just going spores first.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless you know that your spores are absolutely clean, if you're doing it in front of a flow hood, you know, you can use it that way. But it's recommended to go from agar first, which is already a mycelium point, and then it goes into the liquid culture and it'll grow out. I should have brought one that was already grown out. But
Well, that one's got mycelium in it.
yeah, I have some other syringes so you can actually see what the mycelium. This is for a pink oyster, and I brought my work today because I need to inject this too. But if you hold it up to the light, you can see. You can see what the mycelium looks like in that point. So,
Of course.
take a look at that. If you hold it up to the light, you can see it looks kind of like dandelions or something, kind of fluttery. Now you'll notice that you'll have different colors, and that's just because the mycelium does have different features. So one of them's really light in color, that one's darker. That's a pink oyster, which is kind of awesome. What am I missing?
How many cc's do you put in like, say, a mason jar?
A drop. So, I mean, you're just literally putting just a tiny squirt in there, because it's gonna multiply so fast. You're gonna wanna save your liquid cultures for, you know, other things. Because this will last forever. I basically store these in the fridge with the exception of the pink oyster that is a warm temperature growing. It's gonna take about 5 days or so. The more you stir it, so you wanna stir it daily. So either do the marble.
How long can you store it for and not be mistake in a refrigerator? To still use it?
Months.
Months, yeah.
Months and months.
Okay.
Just as long as it's, you know, you're sterilizing. So you use a sterile needle to do your draws out. This one's really fun because I actually leave the syringe attached to the top and then just open it and pull it out as I need. and inject into my drain.
So I purchased some spores. They came in a
Syringe.
syringe.
Yeah.
But they came in the mail, and I'm concerned that because of the heat,
Yeah.
am I screwed?
No, I mean spores are real tough. They can survive in space. I don't order them in the summer here because I don't want to, run the risk of them.
I've
going
had
bad.
5 of them that
Yeah.
they were all dead.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of summer when it was like 118.
I mean,
Picture the
yeah.
vehicles that they're transported in is probably going to be about 140 to 150 in there.
Yeah.
Because they don't cool mail.
Right, right. So I try to order them up in the winter if best you can. You know what I mean? You only, like I said, you only gotta do it once, right? And then you have.
So without a
all you
microscope,
need.
I would need a microscope to be able to see if they're still.
Yeah, I don't know if you could even tell with a microscope if they're dead. I don't know if you can tell.
I mean, best thing to do would be to put it to agar.
Put it on
or
agar
rain
and see if it grows. Yeah. Go ahead, bud.
So like over a year ago, we tried it's actually listed there, the Uncle Bentec.
Yes, I'll get to that. Yeah.
So we had like our mono tub, and we like sterilized like all our graveyards and everything, but I guess it turned out to be a dud or something. And now that I'm looking at the liquid culture like a little bit more closely, when we worked with it, it was kind of like all like clumped together like in one large mass.
Was it liquid culture or was it spores?
It was liquid culture, right?
Because the spores tend to clump together into like one little black ball in your syringe.
It was kind of like some like webbing,
Oh, okay.
like thick webbing. And they were just kind of like.
There are people selling liquid
some crap.
cultures now.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I've never ordered liquid culture online, so I don't know like how they would make sure it was good to get to you in the transport.
What's a flow hood?
A flow hood is it basically.
It's a giant HEPA filter.
Yeah, it's a big HEPA filter fan that blows not real hard. You can barely feel the air pressure coming towards you, but it keeps clean air going this way. So when you're working, nothing's gonna fall into that.
Similar to like what I see in chemistry lab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my flow hood right there. That's my flow hood with that jar in front of it. Yeah. So Uncle Ben's tech, what he was mentioning there, that bag is an Uncle Ben rice bag. I have one right here. So these bags are so awesome because you don't have to do shit. You just inoculate this, and you cut a little slit up here, put some tape over, micropore tape, and then you grow mycelium right in the bag. You don't even have to pressure cook anything. No. It's super, the simplest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? I mean, obviously, it's still helpful to do agar work because even injecting those bags can have contamination because it could be in the spore syringe already, right? And you can inoculate these with agar too. So you can just cut the slit for your air exchange hole and stick a little piece of agar in there and then tape it up and you're good to go. It takes longer to colonize that way, but it will work. It would work just fine.
The Uncle Ben's doesn't need to be wet.
It's already wet. It already has the right moisture content in the bag. You don't have to do anything. Well, I wanted to take you the hard way because I had to go the hard way, damn it. Okay, how many do you use for a monotub? So basically 2 of those Uncle Ben's bags will be good for 6-quart tub, small 6-quart shoebox tubs, right? So then just keep multiplying up from there. You know, I do a ton of them at a time. I mean,
Do the Uncle Ben's need to have a port on there too to be able to?
you have to.
bleed?
Okay, so for one you got to inject it, right? So you're gonna put a hole in it anyways with the injection. With this particular one right here, you can see at the top of the bag there's some tape, right? And at the bottom of the bag there's some tape. So I inoculated at the bottom because the bottom of that bag is see-through. So there's a little view window there that you can actually see the rice. So I try to inoculate by the bottom so I can see the mycelium growing in there. But then I put my air holes at the top so that there can be some air exchange, some fresh air exchange at the top. And basically what I did with this one is I just pinched the bag and stuck the needle through and then taped both holes. The other way is cutting the slit off the top of the bag and then taping it over with the micropore tape. All of it's micropore tape, by the way. You got to use that. Micropore tape is a paper tape like they use for medical. It breathes. It allows some airflow through it, but it doesn't let contamination in. It's like, what is it? 1 micron or 5 micron or something? 2 micron?
So you cut a hole in the top of the bag and then put this,
Yes.
the filter in there?
Yeah, so on these, basically, I can't see the guy, but basically you'll just cut like this. Just like a slit off the top, and then you put this piece of tape over it. And that allows air exchange to happen. What else?
And how long does it take to cultivate the nest?
Um,
Doing it that way, I mean.
So, here's, I'm not going to show you the video because it's stupid. Okay, so I got some pictures. So that's after, is that
A couple weeks.
I think it was a week and a half. That was after a week and a half. And you can see, like, some of them are more than others. Like, this one's, this thing will work. This one's like all white, right? This one over here, you still see some of the brown rice. This is about halfway up the one side. So once it gets to that point, you break it up again. You break it up and mix it all around, and then let it go. I'm pretty confident right now that, because I just did that 5 days ago, I think. I'm pretty confident those are fully colonized now, ready to go to bulk. So it's a super easy way. Like, I couldn't believe, I'm like, what have I been doing? But I enjoy the process though. I really do enjoy doing all of these different ways. So like, it's just another way for me to do it now. So,
So which one's your favorite way of doing it? Like, what is the most essential way?
Grain bags. Grain bags are the like cheapest.
I think grain bags are the best, and the reason being is because you can do the grain to grain transfer. So basically you could take a fully colonized grain bag or jar, you know, shake it, loosen it up, and put it into a new jar, into a new bag, uncolonized. And your grow times are going to, they're going to speed up a lot faster. So rather than looking at 2 weeks, you're looking at 7 days. So it almost cuts it in half. You can't necessarily do that with the Uncle Ben's.
No.
But I live off of grain to grain transfer. Just because it's so much quicker, I could do it before I inoculate like all the rest of my grow. So like, okay, I got a grain bag that's ready to go to bulk. Okay, cool. So cut that open, pour it into the new grains, set that to the side, then inoculate your substrate. So it's just kind of like cutting that extra step out of the way. Uncle Ben's is fun, but it's for small scale.
It's for small grows. Yeah, you're not going to do that on a
so-
big level, but
Yeah.
that's for just yourself. If you're just doing it at home and you want an easy, simple way, that is definitely a simple way. And I just, let's see. I think we already talked about this. You know, like you can store them in jars or in bags. I like Ziploc bags myself. I don't really store them in jars because it takes up too much room.
Is the dehydrator method necessary, or do you? Because I tried using like a fan before, like a box fan. It can take a few days.
It takes a while. Yeah, it takes a while. I prefer dehydrators are cheap, so just get one. I mean,
Yeah.
20, 30 bucks, you have a good dehydrator. It'll last forever. I mean,
Although Phoenix is pretty hot right now.
true. In the summer, you probably just get it done in a day. I hear.
Yeah, you can literally put them on a screen and they'll dry right up.
So I started real small, and I had a little room in the back. I put all this stuff up, and it just kind of, you know, I kept getting more stuff and more stuff, and boom! It was just like, it was nuts, man. It got out of control. I tried all kinds of fancy stuff you could buy online. You can buy all these, everything's done for you. It's automatic. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's just a waste of your money. Don't do it. It's so simple without this stuff. So, you know, and then I had more fun, you know, more fun with the mushrooms, because why not, right? And I met Richard Dawkins, who was like a hero, and I had to get a picture with him, and then I gave her a bouquet of loveliness. See, it's all love. It's all love. So this is Julie's website. Fun Girls Fungi is her company. You should definitely check her out. And she brought some stuff with us over here today some tinctures and some, what else did you bring?
I brought tinctures, are you familiar with tinctures? Gourmet medicinal tinctures. So lion's mane, turkey tail, they all have different medicinal properties. I've got some seasoning that I make out of oyster mushroom powder. None of the fun stuff, but just little buttons and pins and things, because that's generally what I sell at my farmers markets. And
She makes this jerky out of
I
mushrooms.
did bring some jerky.
That
I have
is
it on my
amazing.
fridge.
You think it's meat. You're like, oh my gosh, this is mushrooms? What's happening? It's great. It is great.
What farmer's market are you at?
I'm out of Tucson, so I go up to Mount Lemmon all the time, and it's hard in the summertime because it's hot. But I've got a few different markets I'll be at, and I also ship. So if you're interested, let me
The
know.
tinctures are great. I use her tinctures every day. Seriously.
Lion's mane's wonderful
Lion's mane is
for your
amazing
brain,
for your
nervous
brain.
system, so good stuff.
Everybody get pictures of that?
Yeah.
So here's some more resources that I've found over the years, and I like some of these guys a lot. And which one? So when I first started, the first guy I found was Willie Myko, and he is a character. Let me just tell you. He'll absolutely drive you bonkers watching his videos because he just talks and talks and talks and doesn't get anywhere. And you're like, come on, man, just get to the point.
He's like from back east.
He's from like Boston or Philly or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love the guy. He's great.
So obnoxious.
He helped me out a ton in the beginning though. Like his texts were solid. It works. The stuff he tells you works. He just gets a little wordy sometimes. Myko Geeky's one I found recently. He's pretty cool. He does a podcast on YouTube, all about mushrooms. And Gordo Tech is another guy that's like solid science and has a lot of cheap how to do things, inexpensively. 90-second Mycology is the guy that did the Uncle Ben's tech and made it kind of famous. So, but thank you everybody. If you have any more questions, please feel free.
Okay, this is unrelated, but I gotta hear about those boots.
Oh, yeah. See, these boots, these are fancy boots. They're shiny. They're shiny. Let's see if this will play. It's not playing. This was in my front yard. I saw this little pin, and I'm like, I'm gonna catch it, so I time lapsed it overnight, and yeah, mushrooms are so cool. Anyways, thank you everybody.
I heard that mushrooms are the only ones that can actually absorb vitamin D. Is that true, or is it best to grow them dry, not within the sun, but in an actual air dryer or dehydrator?
They can't dry in the sun? What?
No. I heard that they can, but is it best to go ahead and go with the dehydrator, or is it okay to do it in the sun?
I don't think it matters. I don't know if I'd lay them out in the direct sun because they'll cook, but I guess you could. You could put them in the oven. You could put the oven on low and pull your rack out a little bit and lay them up on there and let them dry out that way. I mean, they break down at like 250, 280, something like that.
Some crazy.
It's a high number, so you're not going to destroy what you're going for by doing that. Just don't put them in like 400 because that's overkill. But there's several ways you can just lay them out on newspaper and put a fan over them. There's a lot of ways, but for me, man, dehydrators are cheap. It's so worth it, and then you can use it for other stuff too. So just get a dehydrator. Simple. So the first time I ordered spore syringes was from Sporeworks, I think. Yeah, but I've heard some bad stuff about them recently, so I don't know. I mean, they still help me out a ton.
I haven't had any problems with Sporeworks.
You haven't had any problems with Sporeworks? Okay, I haven't personally either. I just heard from other people that they had some issues with them. But Little Shop of Spores, let me get back to that page, and there's a bunch of places on there that sell the spores. Recently I went to What's the name of this guy? I don't think I put him on the slide either.
Is there anything in person or any contacts you could give me? Because I really don't like electronics. So,
Do you know anybody in person, Julie? So this is a pre-made grow kit from.
Let me see that.
Can you read that? I can't read the name of that company. See, it's small. The Little Shop of Spores, North Spore is a good one. Inoculate the World is a good one. I've ordered from all of those guys. Never had an issue. Can you read that?
Full Send Organics.
Full Send Organics, that's right. So Organics is with N-I-C-K. Full Send Organics, I'm taking the guy's name is Nick. But I ordered from them. They sent me this this whole grow kit. It's got grain, it's got bulk substrate, manure based, it's pasteurized. I like to order my bulk pre-pasteurized if I can, just so that I don't have to mess with the bucket tech and all that.
So
but
you
bucket
put
tech's pretty easy.
mycelium in that one?
Yeah, so you will inoculate the grain, and then once it colonizes that whole bag, then you'll mix it with the substrate
This is
and
enough to make
a shoebox probably, or smaller.
smaller, because that's a shoebox.
Is that's 12 quart, right?
Okay, yeah.
That's 12, I think. The 6 is smaller than that. So.
Are there any strains that are easier to grow than others, or is it all pretty similar like in Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, there's some that grow faster. I started with Golden Teacher.
Golden Teacher's B+.
Gold, yeah, Gold Teacher B+, Mexicana. Trying to think. Koi Samoy or Ko Samoy. What's it called? Kosamui. That one I had pretty good success and it grew pretty fast. But like albino stuff, blue meanie stuff, like
Penis envy.
yeah, all the penis emmies, they're slow growers. You might be months out before you get anything, 3 or 4 months out before you get some fruit.
Just mention if you heard of the term aborts.
Yeah. Yeah, so aborts are just the pins that don't ever actually grow. So they just stay tiny and you'll get those. I mean,
Still active.
they're still active, you can still use them. So dry them, yeah, just throw them in your bag. It's all good.
Make some tea.
What's that?
We tried just those instead of the original strain. I find a different experience with just the aborts.
Oh, just the aborts.
Yes.
I've never done that, but that's interesting. I don't want to have that many aborts.
So if I ordered some sports oranges online and I tested them on the agar and I got no response, is that more than likely the shipping process because it was
Yeah.
in the summer?
Probably cooked them. Yeah.
So if you have an air fryer, and you don't have a dehydrator, most air fryers, or a lot of air fryers, have a dehydrating function.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Or
that's
if
good
you're
to
gonna
know.
go out and buy one, look for one that has that.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I might have stepped out for a second. Is there any substrate that has never just like just absolutely failed you for anything? Or any kind of whatever you're growing it on?
Substrate?
Whatever you're growing it on.
No. I mean, no. As long as you pasteurize it and everything. I mean, the biggest problem is contamination. You know, if you can make sure your stuff is pasteurized for your bulk substrate, it's going to really lower the amount of contamination you're going to get. And eventually contamination is probably going to happen because it's just you're in open air. You know what I mean? So I've had tubs that went 3-4 flushes, never had contamination, stopped growing because they just ran out of nutrients in the soil. So you toss it out, put it out in the garden, it's compostable. So you got something?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you've ever tried looking.
Oh yeah.
So is it the move?
Huh?
Is it definitely the move? Like something everyone
Yeah, I like lemon teching on mushrooms. I always do. Yeah. It's simple. Just soak them in lemon juice for 30 minutes and yeah. About lemon teching the mushrooms. It's just you soak them in lemon juice because it starts to break down the psilocybin into psilocin before you actually consume them, and then just kind of makes it hit you faster and harder.
What do you do with your mason jars after they
Just clean them out, sterilize them. Yeah,
Reuse them?
you can throw them in the dishwasher and I usually wipe them out with alcohol, get everything out of there, clean them, and then you're good to go. They're glass and steel, they're really good. Yeah.
And then, do you ever use coffee grounds in your grows?
Yeah, that is in the beginning when you do like when you're preparing your grain, you can put a little bit of coffee grounds in there. You don't have to, and you want to use spent grounds. You don't want to use fresh grounds. Like after you do a pot of coffee and you've already used those those coffee grounds, you put a little bit in there. I did it a couple of times, but I don't do it anymore. So I don't know. I just didn't see that much benefit from it.
Right.
Some people swear by it though. Full Send Organics, and organics is with a K at the end. So, one more thing I didn't talk about was your spore syringes. So when you get spore syringes, a lot of times all your spores will be clumped up in one little ball, right? And so you got to shake them forever. It takes so long. Sometimes you bang them on. People say bang them on like a football or a soccer ball or something or a tire. And I was so tired of shaking these damn spore syringes that I figured out a way to do it without any labor. I'm lazy. So basically I just wrapped the spore syringe in paper towel and then taped it up at the ends and threw it in the dryer with no heat and just let it go for a couple hours, and I don't have to mess with it. It just shakes it up fine and there's nothing clumps at the end. It's great. So make sure you don't have heat on your dryer because it'll ruin it, but it works.
You know what else you can do?
What's that?
Tape it to a vibrator.
Hey now.
It works.
She said things and stuff. Sounds fun.
It doesn't have to be a used one.
Oh, she just went further. Okay, all right, sure. Yeah, you can use
A back
go to the
massager.
castle and they will hook you up with a special spore shaker.
A back massager.
What about your tubs and your bins? Like, do you clean them before you start the process?
Oh yeah. Wipe everything down with 70% isopropyl alcohol. The reason you use 70% and not 90% or higher is because 70% actually takes longer to evaporate. So it actually kills more of the stuff you're trying to kill because it lingers. You know what I mean? And you want that. You don't want to use 90% because it evaporates so fast. There's still some stuff alive there. So I know, like, in your head you're like, well, 90% is better. I'm gonna use 90. No, don't use 90. Use 70. 70% isopropyl alcohol every time.
And a spray bottle.
And I get the spray bottles of it. It's so convenient. I love the spray bottles of alcohol. Not for like at the bar too, but I mean. Anything else, guys? Thank you so much. It's been great. I hope you learned something.